If you've ever had your life split into a before and an after, you know the sound it makes. For me, it was a single ring and 6 words that cut clean through a quiet kitchen. Ethan's in the hospital. Accident. Come if you want. Click. No hello. Nowhere, no how bad. Just Vanessa's voice, sugar on metal, and then empty line. I stood there with a dish towel in my hand and a pan of onions turning black on the stove, listening to the silence breathe. 68 years old, retired mechanic, widower. I thought I'd learned every kind of silence a house could throw at a man. I was wrong. This one reached straight down my throat and pinched. I didn't turn the stove off. I didn't lock the door. I just grabbed my keys, my wallet, and my phone, and then I was outside, boots clapping down the porch steps like I was running on someone else's legs. The pickup coughed awake on the second try, just like I taught Ethan's first engine to do when he was 12, and we traded Saturdays for scraped knuckles and coffee breath. That's the kind of thing a father remembers, which bolts he loosened, which bolts he over-tightened. Which summer afternoon he got to see a boy look at something dead and make it live again. I wish I could tell you that I drove like a man with perfect control. Truth is, I missed the first red light entirely and only stopped when a horn the size of a church bell screamed me back into my body. People swore. I mouthed sorry and went on breathing like a piston about to seize. All the way to St. Agnes, the radio talked to no one, and I tried not to remember the last time I'd smelled antiseptic that strong. 5 years before, when my wife coughed once, then twice, and then never again. Grief doesn't die. It just waits for new company. The parking lot at 6:17 p.m. looked like every bad day you've ever had. Cut-through headlights, hunched shoulders, the shuffle of feet that forgot how to be feet. I walked fast enough to feel the old shoulder scar tear a little beneath my jacket. The automatic doors parted, and the hospital air did what it always does, swept the outside off your skin and left you raw-eyed and obedient. Excuse me, I'm looking for my son, Ethan Miller. He was admitted. My voice came out tight, like a wire pulled wrong. The intake clerk pointed at a monitor, typed with 2 fingers, and said, ICU, 3rd floor. Room 312, take elevator B. Is he? I didn't finish. She didn't either. Some questions are lazy grenades. Elevator B smelled like old coffee and fear. 3rd floor, doors open, and there it was. The long, bright throat of a hallway where every sound gets skinned alive and hung on the walls. Shoes, beeps, the soft panic of people trying not to panic. Room numbers lined up like a countdown. I could feel my heart trying to sprint ahead of me. 306, 308, 310. My son was 2 doors from whatever I'd be for the rest of my life. I want you to know something before I keep going. I am not a dramatic man. I fixed transmissions in January without gloves. I held my wife's hand until the machine went to a flat line that looked patient, almost polite. I don't break easy, but when I saw 312 beside a closed door and a navy cardigan, I recognized that cardigan Vanessa wore on Sundays when she wanted people to call her dear. A heat moved through me that could have warped steel. She didn't look at me. She was talking to someone on her phone, in that whisper that performs grief. Yes, terrible. Pray for us, she breathed, and made sure the breath carried down the hall. I stepped toward her, and that's when it happened, when the after began. A hand clamped my forearm, strong enough to stop a charging bull. A woman, brunette hair tied back, navy scrubs, badge turned so quick I didn't catch the name. Dark, steady eyes, sir, she said, almost no sound in the word. Hide and wait. Don't ask questions. Trust me. Before I could even form, are you out of your mind? She nudged me sideways into the half-open door of 3111. It was dark, the blinds pulled and one lamp unplugged. She pointed at a shadow between a portable vitals machine and a wardrobe. There, please, 30 seconds. Trust me, you have to understand, I'm a man who does not hide. But I looked at her, and I looked at the closed door of 312, and the hallway, and the cardigan, and somewhere in the quiet math a father does without numbers. I stepped into the dark and leaned against cold painted wall. The nurse slipped the door mostly shut, leaving a little sliver of light so thin it felt like a slit in my own chest. I could hear my pulse. I could hear the hallway hum, And then I heard Vanessa's voice as if it had been strung tight and plucked. "Is the paperwork ready?" she asked. "No tremble, no tears. Just business run through velvet," a man answered, the kind of voice that wears cufflinks. "Almost transfers clean. If he remains unresponsive, we'll file for temporary guardianship," and someone laughed. Not loud, not long, enough. It was Vanessa. I pressed my palm to the wall to stop a feeling I didn't know how to name. I could smell the disinfectant. I could smell the ghost of engine oil on my jacket. I could smell onions burning in a kitchen 2 neighborhoods away. In a sliver of light, I watched dust float like tiny, aimless lives. "Friday," the man said. "If nothing changes, everything in his name is yours by Friday. If nothing changes." Some words don't mean what they mean. A father hears the shape around them. I wanted to yank the door open. I wanted to rip whatever root held my boots to the floor and plant it under someone else. But the nurse's last look, how certain it had been, held me like a clamp. Trust me, I listened instead. I forced breath in measured counts the way you do when a bolt is about to round, and you know one wrong move ruins the whole job. 4 in, 6 out again. My phone buzzed. One fat, guilty vibration against my thigh. I killed it in a pocket without light, barely breathing, as the voices outside dropped to that private, money-softened tone. The man's shoes scuffed. Paper whispered. A pen clicked. I knew those sounds. I'd heard them in offices where men smile without showing their teeth. I thought about the last time Ethan and I worked side by side. 2 months back, his alternator had turned on him. We swapped it out in the driveway while the sun pulled long gold ropes across the hood. He'd been pale. I said, "You're burning the candle at both ends, kid." He'd laughed, and Vanessa had leaned out the door with a glass of orange juice the color of a promise. Grief waited to be invited in. I didn't open the door. Before I go further, I tell you exactly what I heard in that hallway. And the way it cracked the world, I thought I knew. Let me say one thing. The way the YouTube folks like it said, before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. I don't know much about algorithms, but I know about witnesses. If you're here, be one for me. Footsteps shifted closer. The thin seam of light grew brighter, then dim again. I could see Vanessa's shadow slide across the floor outside, narrow and elegant as a blade. "Just make sure the bank doesn't flag anything," she said. "He's always been careful. I don't want questions. You'll have what you want," the man said. Soon. I pressed my knuckles against the wall until bone spoke to bone. I thought of the first time Ethan gripped my forefinger with his whole hand. I thought of his first bike, his first job, the way he hugged like he meant to set a shoulder back in place. A father lives in 1,000 ordinary moments. And sometimes he hides in the dark, counting seconds so he can bring the extraordinary to heel. In the hall, a cart squeaked. A door hinge sighed. The nurse's voice, hers, the one who'd shoved me into the dark, floated past, calm as a level bubble. "Evening rounds." The man cleared his throat. Vanessa's shadow shifted again. The seam of light narrowed until the room was almost pure shape and breath. 30 seconds, she'd said. God help me. I prayed I could wait the 31st, and then I heard the sentence that turned the floor under me to ice. "I've been increasing the dose for weeks," Vanessa murmured. "No one suspects. By the weekend he won't wake." The lamp in the corner might as well have exploded. My hand found the doorknob on instinct. My hand was already on the knob when the door eased inward from the other side. The same nurse slid in on a whisper of rubber soles and closed it behind her with 2 fingers. Up close I could read the badge now. Clara Ruiz, RN, ICU. Her eyes found my hand and then my face. Both were shaking. "Don't," she breathed. "Not yet. She's killing my son." The words scraped my throat raw. "She just said, I heard." Clara lifted a palm, not to silence me, but to steady me like you steady a pan that's starting to boil. "I needed you to hear it too. Now we make it hold in court." The word clanged around the dark room like a dropped wrench. I wanted blood, not paperwork. But I'd also rebuilt enough engines to know you don't drive on a miracle and call it a plan. She stepped closer. Even in the dim, her voice stayed level. Mr. Miller, I've had your son on my caseload for 3 weeks of outpatient follow-ups. The symptoms didn't line up with stress. They lined up with warfarin exposure, unprescribed anticoagulant. It thins blood. It causes internal bleeding if abused. It's subtle. People miss it until it's catastrophic. I tried to breathe past the rush in my ears. How do you know? Clara swallowed, and for the first time, something softened behind her training. Because my brother died that way, years ago. Same pattern. I swore I'd never miss it again. That quiet vow clicked a gear in me I didn't know I still had. What do you need? Evidence. She ticked it off, small, precise. Toxicology on the IV bag. Chain of custody intact. Video of her alone with his line. Audio of intent. Timelines that match dosage and symptoms. We're close. You recorded her, I said. It wasn't a question. She touched the pocket of her scrub top. Redundantly. My body cam, she tapped a square clipped under her ID, is on when I'm in the hall, but it picks up everything, and some things I can't submit without protocol. So, she showed me her phone, locked. A backup. And my son? It came out like a prayer disguised as a question. Dr. Peters is head of toxicology tonight. He's running a stat assay on Ethan's current bag. I switched it out as soon as I had cause. She glanced at the closed door, every sense tuned outward. If the test lights up the way I think it will, we'll reverse it. Vitamin K plasma. He's young. He has a shot. But we can't tip her, not even a hair. I saw what she was building, a bridge fragile as glass with a man's life on it, and I understood my job on it. Don't jump. Clara took a breath. Here's the part you're going to hate. You're going to go into 312 and act like you know nothing. You're going to be the father she thinks you are. Broken, apologetic, grateful she called. You will not accuse her. You will not look at the IV pole like it's a weapon. You will buy us 30 minutes, give or take. I've called Detective Harris from Major Crimes. We've worked with her on medical tampering. She knows the drill. She'll move fast, but she needs something to land on when she gets here. Peter's results. Camera pulls. My audio. I stood there with every bone in me trying to leap out of my skin. And if Vanessa walks out? Clara's mouth went hard. We shadow her. Security will keep her updated in a waiting room. I've already flagged her badge access to Ethan's room, quietly. She doesn't know yet. Please, Mr. Miller, don't give her a reason to run. The room seemed to tilt. I braced a hand against the counter and felt the world level under my palm. I looked at Clara, the set of her shoulders, the calm that only comes from standing in the worst moments with people and never leaving. And I did something I'm not good at. I handed her my trust. Okay, I swallowed. Tell me exactly what to say. Simple is safer, she said. You came as fast as you could. You're scared. You're sorry for any tension in the past. You're grateful she called. If you need a line, tell her you want a fresh start if Ethan pulls through. Predators relax when prey surrenders. The word predators fit Vanessa like a custom dress, and my son. I asked again, because fathers repeat the only question that matters until someone nails it to an answer. Clara's voice softened, but it never lied. He's fighting. We're helping. Let us help. We stood still a moment longer, the kind of still that makes time audible. Then she cracked the door, angled her head and listened. The hall hummed. Voices moved away. She nodded once. Walk out like you were using the restroom in here, she said. Turn right. Room 3212. I'll pass in 3 minutes with a med cart like I'm doing a normal round. If I stop, I'm stalling her. If I keep rolling, everything is still quiet. If I say, Mr. Miller, could you step out a moment? Follow me without questions. That means Peters has results. What do I call you? It mattered somehow to have a name to hang my hope on. Clara, she said. And I meant it, trust me. The hallway light ghosted our faces when the door opened. I stepped out first. A man walking out of a bathroom into a life he was still pretending to recognize. A volunteer pushed a magazine cart past me. A young father jiggled a toddler who was all cheeks and sleep. Ordinary life had the nerve to keep happening. I turned right. 12. The numbers were small and smug beside the door. I pressed my palm to it, counted to 3 so it wouldn't rattle on the frame, and stepped inside. Hospitals try to make rooms look like rooms instead of machines. They fail. Ethan lay in the center of a thicket of beeps and green bands climbing glass. His skin had found that grey-white color illness keeps in its pocket for special occasions. Tubing arced to a bag that dripped a steady discipline into his vein. I forced my eyes away from it and toward the person who wanted me to stare at it too long. Vanessa turned, face arranged. She did surprise well. Open mouth, damp lash, hand splayed to her collarbone like there's a bird inside trying to punch free. "George," she breathed. "I didn't know if you'd—" She let the sentence fall, the way you'd drop crumbs for people you want to follow you into the woods. "I called as soon as it happened. I came." My voice knew enough not to crack. I crossed the room slowly and took Ethan's hand, and it was cold in a way that offended the universe. "How bad?" "They don't know yet." She looked at the monitor as if it were a kind friend. "They say it could be stress, overwork. He never listens." A practiced sigh. "I'm just trying to hold it together." I nodded, like a man glued together with the wrong glue. "Thank you for calling me." I made myself look at her and let a fraction of my face fold, the father version of laying down a weapon. "I know we haven't." Seen eye to eye, she tilted her head, benevolence loading. "Oh, George, that doesn't matter right now." "It does to me." I swallowed on cue. "If he pulls through, I'd like to start fresh. No grudges." I let my gaze flick to Ethan and back like gravity had given me permission to be softer. "He loves you. That's always been enough for me. I'm sorry if I ever made you feel—" I groped for a word that let her fill in the blank with her favorite story about me. "Unwelcome." Something eased in her posture, a thread, a stitch. Predators relax when prey surrenders. Clara was right. Vanessa's hand floated toward my forearm and gave it a pat that practiced kindness without ever contacting the heart. "That means a lot," she said, and for a second the mask slipped just enough to let appetite blink. "He needs us together." "I'm here," I said, and meant it in a way she would never understand. A cart rolled past the door. The sound moved on, normal. I kept my eyes on Ethan's knuckles, on the grease lines years of work had laid into the little places soap never truly reaches. Boys become men while you're making dinner and paying bills and telling them not to forget their jacket. And then one day you're counting the rise in a chest and calling it victory. Vanessa shifted closer to the IV pole. "The nurses are very kind," she said casually. "They let me help a little. I'm the only one who knows what he likes, how he prefers things." Her fingers hovered near the clamp, like a pianist testing the air over a keyboard. I moved my body by a half-inch and blocked her sightline. Not obvious, not confrontational, just an old man rearranging the ache in his back. She smiled at the floor. The doorway filled with motion then, Clara pushing a cart like a ship's steward. She didn't look at me. She didn't need to. She adjusted a monitor lead, checked a bag, made notes I couldn't read. "Evening, Miss Doyle," she said, Vanessa's maiden name somehow remembered from an old form. I watched the faintest tick of annoyance pass under the other woman's skin. "Vitals are stable. Mr. Miller?" Clara's eyes flicked to mine for a single heartbeat. Neutral, no stall, no signal. The bridge was still holding. Vanessa slipped her phone out and tapped the screen with her thumb. A message flashed and died. She was the kind who never really leaves a room. She just extends it into whatever device is nearest. I kept my hand around Ethan's and whispered the story fathers tell through skin. "Stay, stay, stay," Clara finished. Gave the most ordinary nod I've ever been grateful for, and pushed the cart out. The room breathed again. 30 minutes, she'd said. I could do 30 years if it meant the next one had my son breathing in it. Vanessa broke the silence like glass under a heel. "I'm going to step into the hall and call Pastor Leary," she said softly. "Put Ethan on the prayer list." She tilted her head, the picture of devotion. "You want anything? Tea, coffee?" "Just time," I said, because it's the only thing a father ever truly wants. She smiled like she was selling me some. The door clicked behind her. I leaned close to Ethan's ear. "It's your old man," I whispered. "I'm here, I know. We're fixing it. Hold." Footsteps paused outside our door, Vanessa's cadence. Lower-pitched voice beside her, a man, paper, the hush of something serious being passed hand to hand. I didn't move to the door this time. I didn't need to. Vanessa's heels clicked away, that crisp, businesslike rhythm that never quite fit hospital corridors. The sound turned a corner, then blurred into the shuffle of night shift changeovers. I waited, counted breaths. 6 in, 6 out, an old mechanic's rhythm for loosening rusted bolts and nerves alike. Silence. Then a man's voice. The same one I'd heard earlier through the door, measured. The kind that doesn't raise itself because it's never had to. You'll get the digital copies tonight, he said. Once he's declared unfit, it all transfers automatically. Vanessa murmured something I couldn't catch. I crept closer to the door. The gap between it and the frame poured light onto the floor in a narrow, accusing strip. I lowered my head, listening. The bank accounts, too? She asked, the sweetness gone from her tone. Of course, he said. By Friday, everything with his name on it is yours. If he wakes up, she pressed. Then we delay it, refile. But if he doesn't... He didn't have to finish. The way air hung after that, if said the rest. A shuffle of papers. The sound of a pen dragged across something legal. Then Vanessa's low laugh, dry, amused, perfectly in control. He always was careful, she said. So predictable. It's like he wanted me to learn where every penny went. That makes him a good man, the lawyer replied. Makes him an easy mark, she corrected. That word mark went through me like a wrench through glass. My son wasn't a mark. He was a man who worked double shifts to keep his company alive, who sent me texts at midnight asking about interest rates, who once showed up at my house with soup when my back went out, and stayed to fix a broken porch light. I wanted to throw the door open, drag both of them into the light of that hallway, but Clara's warning echoed back, trust me, so I listened. And that's when the real poison spilled. How long can this go on? The lawyer asked. Not long, Vanessa said softly. I've been increasing it. A little more in his morning juice, a little added to the IV here. No one questions a wife's devotion. By the weekend, nature will take its course. I gripped the edge of the counter so hard, my nails dug into laminate. The blood drained from my arms. And if the toxicology people ask questions? They won't, she said. The nurse on duty adores me. They all do. I'm the model wife, everybody says so. Her laugh this time was shorter, sharper. He always called me his blessing, she continued. Imagine that, his blessing. My vision went white around the edges. The world narrowed to her voice, the lawyer's shuffle, the hum of machinery down the hall. I'd thought about the first time Ethan brought her home. How polite she'd been, how her hand had stayed on his arm all night, like a flag marking territory. I'd called her refined. My wife, God rest her, would have seen through her in a minute. You'll have to move fast, the lawyer said. Once it's done, you disappear. Change your name, New City. I can help with that. You'll be compensated, Vanessa said. I know, he replied, and I could hear his smile. They paused. A heartbeat. Then her tone changed, warmer, low, almost bored. What about his father? What about him? The man asked. Can he claim anything? Not legally. Everything's in your husband's name. Once he's incapacitated, you control it all. The old man's just a spectator. Just a spectator. That one lodged in my chest and stayed there. You raise a boy with your hands. Grease under your nails, knees on concrete. Teaching him to turn a wrench without stripping the head, and then one day you're called a spectator in his life. Vanessa gave a small hum of approval. Good. I don't like loose ends. I could almost see her lips curling when she said it. They moved toward the end of the hall, voices fading until they turned a corner. Footsteps receded, paper rustled, a door clicked, and the silence that followed wasn't peace. It was a loaded gun waiting for a trigger. I exhaled only when the corridor settled again. My legs wanted to fold, but rage stiffened them straight. Behind me, Ethan's monitor beeped in the next room, steady but fragile, like a clock counting down. I stepped out into the hallway. The nurse station glowed under its muted lights, empty, except for a half-finished coffee and a stack of charts. Down the hall, the exit sign threw a faint red sheen across the polished floor. I turned toward the nurses. Supply room where Clara had said she'd be verifying. Samples. She met me halfway. Her face told me she already knew. I heard everything, I said. All of it, Clara nodded once. Good. We have more than enough for suspicion. Dr. Peters just confirmed trace warfarin in the IV bag. The lab's running a full tox screen, but it's there. We have time-stamped samples, chain of custody signed. How long before it's enough for the police? They're en route, she said, glancing at her watch. 10 minutes, maybe less. But she can't suspect. If she runs, she won't, I said, too fast, too sure. She thinks she's smarter than the rest of us. Clara's eyes softened. That's what we'll use. She handed me a folded sheet of paper, the printout of the test results, circled numbers in red ink. This proves intent to harm if cross-matched with the earlier labs. I looked at the numbers, at the decimals and ratios that meant nothing to me, except she's been killing him slowly. Clara, I said quietly, you ever get tired of people doing this to the ones who love them? She gave a humorless smile. Every day. That's why I don't look away anymore. The loudspeaker crackled, paging Dr. Peters to ICU. Dr. Peters to ICU. She pocketed her phone. He's bringing the printed tox results now. Once Detective Harris gets here, we act. I nodded, but my body was already moving, almost on instinct, back toward Ethan's door. George, Clara hissed. You can't. I'm not doing anything, I said. I'm making sure she doesn't. I stood outside 312 and listened. Inside, I could hear Vanessa humming, some tuneless, pretty thing, the kind of song you hum to disguise thought. I eased the door open. She was by the window, phone in hand, light from the parking lot painting her face a soft gold that would have fooled angels. Everything all right? She asked, smiling. Just fine, I said, forcing my voice to a low, steady hum. Doctor said they'll run more tests. Could be exhaustion. See, she said, and the smile widened. I told him to slow down. Her phone buzzed. She checked it and turned slightly away, speaking low. Yes, tonight. No one suspects. He'll never wake. I'll text when it's done. She thought I couldn't hear. I let her keep thinking that. When she hung up, she turned back, slipping the mask on again. I might step out for some air, she said sweetly. You look exhausted. Why don't you rest? I'll stay, I said. I've got enough air right here. Her eyes lingered on me a little too long, calculating, maybe wondering what I'd overheard. I gave her nothing back, just the tired face of an old man who'd come to wait. Outside, the elevator chimed. Clara's cart squeaked back into view. Behind her, two silhouettes in plain clothes stepped off. Detective Harris had arrived. Vanessa turned toward the sound, frowning. What now? Routine checks, I said, my voice as calm as the eye of a storm. Hospitals love their routines, and as Clara's knock sounded, 3 soft taps, exactly as planned. I realized the next few minutes would decide whether my son lived to see daylight. I took one more look at Ethan's still hand. Then I looked at the woman who'd vowed to love him. Let's see, I whispered, how your luck runs when it's not poisoned. The knock was gentle, almost polite. 3 taps. Just like Clara had said. Vanessa turned toward the door, annoyed, one hand still resting on her phone. Come in, she called, voice smooth as glass over gravel. Clara entered, pushing a small silver tray. A clipboard sat on top of it, with a sealed evidence bag tucked discreetly underneath. The soft wheels of the cart whispered across the tile. Behind her, the 2 detectives, plain clothes, no badges visible, hovered by the nurse's station, pretending to check paperwork. Everything looked ordinary. Too ordinary. Evening rounds again, Ms. Doyle, Clara said brightly. Sorry to bother you twice in 1 hour. Protocol. Vanessa smiled, that tight, patient smile she used when pretending to be helpful. Of course. Anything for protocol. Clara adjusted Ethan's IV line, scanning the monitor, scribbling notes. Every movement was rehearsed, deliberate, slow. She was giving the detectives time to settle into position. Your husband's levels look better tonight, Clara said casually, glancing up. Dr. Peters thinks he might respond to stimuli soon. Vanessa stiffened. Respond. How soon? Clara shrugged, masking the smile tugging at her mouth. Hard to say. Could be hours. Could be minutes. Miracles happen here every day. The color drained slightly from Vanessa's face. She turned toward Ethan, her expression flickering, guilt, fear, or maybe just calculation. Then she straightened her posture and put on that syrupy voice again. "Thank God," she said. "He deserves a second chance." Clara's tone stayed professional, but I could see the glint in her eye when she met mine for a split second. We were reading from the same script now. I played my part. "He's strong," I said softly. "Always was. You remember Vanessa? He worked through the flu last winter, refused to see a doctor. Said hospitals made him nervous." I let the words hang like bait. She forced a laugh. "Yes, he always was stubborn." "Yeah," I said, "but sometimes stubbornness saves a man's life." That landed. She blinked, unsure if it was a threat or a compliment. "Good. Let her guess." Clara finished her inspection and looked toward me. "Mr. Miller, could I have a quick word in the hall?" That was the signal. The one she told me to follow without questions. I gave Ethan's hand one last squeeze and stepped out. The detectives moved closer as soon as the door shut. "Detective Harris," said the taller one. A woman in her 40s with steady eyes and the kind of calm that comes from 1,000 late-night interrogations. She offered a brief nod. "We've got the lab results. They match. The IV bag contains warfarin residue. No prescription, no authorization. It's deliberate tampering." Clara handed her the evidence bag sealed and labeled. "Time stamped at 22:14. The security cameras caught her replacing the original bag an hour earlier. It's on file." Harris examined the bag, then looked at me. "You heard the conversation, Mr. Miller?" "Yes," I said. "Every word. She confessed to increasing the dose, mentioned the bank transfers, and called my son's death inevitable." Harris nodded grimly. "We'll move carefully. If she suspects we're on to her, she could panic or try something else." Clara exhaled. "She's dangerous, Detective. She's done this before. I'd bet my license on it." The other detective, a younger man named Ruiz, no relation to Clara, adjusted his earpiece. "Her phone activity matches wire transfers to a private account overseas. We've traced it to an alias, Karen Doyle. She's been through 2 marriages under that name," Clara muttered under her breath. "And probably 2 victims." I looked back through the glass window of Ethan's room. Vanessa was seated again, scrolling through her phone, feigning calm. "That woman was a storm in human skin." Harris turned to me. "We're going to make the arrest quietly, but we need a statement from you, something that makes her talk. Keep her distracted until I step in." "Think you can do that?" I stared at the woman on the other side of the glass. "I can." "Good," Harris said. "Don't push too far. Just hold her attention." Clara squeezed my arm lightly. "You've already done the hard part," she whispered. "Now let's finish it." I nodded and stepped back inside. Vanessa looked up, pretending surprise. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I said. "Just the nurse explaining some things, routine." I walked over to the chair beside Ethan's bed and sat down. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my gums, but my voice was calm. "You know, Vanessa, I've been thinking about what you said earlier, about second chances." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "Oh, I think we all get one, maybe even 2. But some people, they use them up without realizing." I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. "You ever think about that?" She tilted her head, smiling faintly. "You're tired, George?" "You should rest." "Maybe," I said. "But tired men tend to see things clearer." The smile froze for half a heartbeat. Then she forced a laugh. "You sound like my father. Always warning me about karma." "Smart man," I said. The air thickened between us. I could almost hear Clara and the detectives outside, holding their breath. Vanessa stood, smoothing her skirt, ready to end the conversation. "I'll go grab a coffee." But she didn't make it to the door. The latch clicked open from the other side, and Detective Harris stepped in, clipboard in hand. "Face the perfect mask of hospital calm." "Miss Doyle," she said, "I need to verify a few details on your husband's file." "Should only take a moment." Vanessa blinked, wary. "No? Can't it wait?" "I'm afraid not," Harris said politely. "It's urgent." Something shifted in Vanessa's expression. Suspicion flickered, then settled. She smiled again. "Of course." Harris stepped closer as if reviewing notes. "You're listed as emergency contact and power of attorney, correct?" "Yes. And you were present when the current IV was attached?" Vanessa frowned. "Why are you asking me that?" Harris looked up. Her calm turned cold, because the toxicology report shows deliberate tampering, and we have it on record that you were the last person near your husband's line. The room went still. For a long second, no one breathed. Then Vanessa laughed, a high, brittle sound that cracked halfway through. That's ridiculous. You can't accuse me of— We can, Harris said, producing a small recorder. We have audio of your conversation in the hallway. You discussed dosage, timing, and financial gain. Vanessa's eyes snapped to me, wild, betrayed. I didn't record you, I said quietly. You recorded yourself. You just didn't know who was listening. Her hand darted for her phone. But Ruiz entered behind Harris, swift as a shadow, catching her wrist mid-air. Vanessa Doyle, Harris said evenly. You are under arrest for attempted murder and financial fraud. You have the right to remain silent. No! She screamed, twisting, but it was no use. The mask was gone now. What stared back at me wasn't a wife. It was something hollow, wearing a memory of love. You'll regret this, old man. She spat. He would have died anyway. I just helped nature along. I didn't move, didn't speak. I just looked at her and said the only thing that mattered. No, Vanessa. You helped greed along. Nature's too kind for people like you. Harris led her out, handcuffed, her protests fading into the hallway hum. Clara lingered by the door, eyes soft but tired. It's over, she said. I turned to Ethan. The monitor's beeps were steadier now, stronger. Not yet, I whispered. Not until he wakes, Clara nodded. He will. The antidote's already working through him. I sank into the chair beside the bed, exhaling everything I'd been holding since that first phone call. The hallway beyond buzzed with controlled chaos. Voices, paperwork, footsteps. But in that small room, time finally stopped chasing me. Thank you, I said quietly, for trusting me with the truth. Clara gave a small, tired smile. It's not trust, Mr. Miller, it's instinct. Same as yours. She left me there with my son, breathing, safe, and still half in a world between life and death. And for the first time in years, I let myself pray, not for vengeance, but for morning. Morning light filtered through the hospital blinds, thin and hesitant, the kind that feels like it's asking permission to enter. The night before had ended with handcuffs and sirens muffled by automatic doors, but for me, the noise didn't end. It sat behind my ribs, humming. Ethan was still out, hooked to monitors that now beeped with something like optimism. The antidote was running its slow race through him. Clara said we'd know more by noon. I hadn't slept. Fathers don't sleep when their kids are fighting for breath. Vanessa's voice still echoed in my head. The scream, the venom, that last line before Harris took her away. He would have died anyway. I wondered how many times she'd practiced that in her head. The justification that let her sleep next to him while planning his death. Clara came in around 7 a.m. carrying 2 paper cups. Coffee, she said, setting one by me. Burnt and bitter, but it keeps your spine straight. Thanks. I tried a sip. It did both. You did well last night, she said. You stayed calm. That probably saved him. I wasn't calm, I said. I was just running on something older than panic, she smiled. That's what being a parent is. Outside, the world continued like it didn't owe us an explanation. Cleaners mopping, intercoms paging, someone laughing too loudly in the waiting area. Inside, everything felt suspended between heartbeat and silence. A few hours later, Detective Harris came in, clipboard in hand, her plain clothes replaced by a crisp navy jacket. She looked tired but satisfied. She's not getting out any time soon, she said. She's talking already, trying to shift blame to the lawyer. We've got her fingerprints on the tampered IV bag, recordings, and financial evidence from her phone. This case will hold. I nodded slowly. Good. She had an alias in another state, Karen Doyle, married a man there who died under similar circumstances. Clara's breath caught, and no one caught it. She left before the tox report came back, Harris said. New name, new city, new husband. Her eyes softened as she looked at me. You and your son were lucky, Mr. Miller, very lucky. Luck's what's left when good people show up, I said, nodding toward Clara. The detective smiled faintly. Then we'll call it teamwork. The rest of the morning crawled. Every time Ethan's fingers twitched, I leaned forward, holding my breath like I could will his eyes to open. I'd forgotten what his voice sounded like without pain in it. At 10:47, his eyelids fluttered. Once, twice, then his lips parted just enough to let out a sound I hadn't expected to hear again. "Dad!" My chest broke open. "Yeah, son, I'm here." He looked confused, then scared. "What happened?" "Long story," I said, gripping his hand. "You've been through hell, but you made it back." He tried to shift, but Clara stepped in, checking his vitals. "Easy, Ethan, you're safe. Don't try to move too much." Ethan blinked at her, then at me. "Where's Vanessa?" I hesitated. There it was, the question that would drag us both through the fire again. "She's gone," I said finally. "She won't hurt you anymore." He looked away, jaw tightening. "You're lying." I wish I was. He stared at the ceiling, breathing unevenly. I could see the gears turning behind his eyes. Shock, denial, disbelief. I'd worked with metal my whole life, but I'd never seen anything break as quietly as trust. Clara stepped out to give us space. Ethan's voice came out hoarse. "You hated her." "I was right to," I said. "I just didn't know how right." He closed his eyes. "She said you were trying to take everything from us, that you didn't think she was good enough for me. I didn't think she was honest enough for you," I said. "Turns out I was still giving her too much credit." He swallowed hard. She wouldn't." "She would," I said softly. "And she did." I didn't tell him about the doses, the recordings, the papers she'd signed to steal his life before it ended. He didn't need those images right now. He just needed to know the truth in simple form. "She was after your business," I said. "Your accounts. Everything you built." He stared at the monitor, blinking fast. "All that time. She said she was worried about me working too much. She kept bringing me smoothies, vitamins." My throat tightened. "She poisoned you through love, son. That's what makes people like her so dangerous." He turned to look at me. "You knew!" "Not until last night. A nurse figured it out. We caught her before it was too late." He nodded slowly, tears starting to find their way down. "You saved my life." I shook my head. "Clara did." "The detectives did. I just didn't look away." He smiled weakly. "Mom would have done the same." That line cracked something in me. "Yeah," I said, my voice breaking. "Your mother would have done it better." We sat there in silence for a long time, father and son, the living and the almost lost. Outside the window the world kept going, unbothered by how close it had come to losing one more good man. By afternoon, the hospital had released its official statement. No comment during ongoing investigation. I didn't care about statements. I cared about the fact that Ethan's color was returning, the faint pulse in his wrist steady and defiant. Clara came back around 3, clipboard in hand, her hair escaping the tie at the back of her head. "You're both clear to move to observation. 2 days, maybe 3, and you can go home." I smiled for the first time in what felt like forever. "Thank you, Clara." She waved it off. "Just doing my job." "Not like that," I said. "You saved my son." "You saved me." She blushed slightly, which I hadn't expected. "Well," she said quietly, "someone had to make sure the good ones get to stay." That night, when the nurses dimmed the lights and the monitors softened to a lullaby rhythm, Ethan looked at me with that same curious look he'd had when he was 10 and asked how engines worked. "Dad," he said, "how did you not lose your mind?" "I did," I admitted, "but I didn't let her see it. Sometimes that's how you win." He smiled faintly. "You always said revenge doesn't fix things." "This wasn't revenge," I said, watching the slow drip of the IV. "This was protection. Revenge is when you strike back. Protection is when you make sure they never strike again." He nodded, eyes closing, exhaustion pulling him back to safety. I sat there a while longer, letting the quiet soak in. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel empty. Out in the hallway, Clara stood talking to Detective Harris. Paperwork, signatures, closure. But when she looked up and met my eyes through the glass, I gave her a small nod of thanks. She returned it with a tired smile. The world had almost ended for me last night, but tonight it began again. Hospitals have a strange way of erasing time. Daylight filters through blinds. Night slips back in through the same cracks, and before you know it, you've lived a lifetime between two heartbeats. By the time the trial process began, weeks later, I thought I'd seen every shade of exhaustion. But that morning, watching Vanessa walk into the courtroom in a grey prison jumpsuit, I realized there were still new colors in Rage. The courtroom smelled like polish and paper. I sat behind the prosecution table beside Clara, who had agreed to testify as the medical expert. My son wasn't strong enough to attend yet, but he'd sent me a text that morning. 3 words: make her answer. Detective Harris approached us briefly. "Ready?" she asked. "As I'll ever be," I said. "She's pled not guilty," Harris continued. "Her lawyer's going to paint this as a tragic misunderstanding, a grieving wife who made a medical mistake. Stay calm no matter what they throw at you," Clara nodded. "The facts will hold." The judge entered. We rose. Then the trial began. Vanessa looked different, without her carefully crafted presentation. No jewelry, no calculated elegance. But her eyes still burned with that same defiance that once convinced people she was harmless. The prosecutor started slow, laying the foundation: evidence chain, recordings, toxicology results, timestamps. Every line Clara had risked her job for was now printed and projected for the court to see. The IV bag contained 7.3 milligrams of warfarin, an unprescribed dose capable of inducing internal bleeding. Clara explained clearly. It was switched manually without medical authorization. The defense attorney, a man who looked permanently unimpressed with everyone, stood. "Nurse Ruiz, is it possible another staff member could have made that switch in error?" Clara didn't blink. "No, we log every handoff electronically. The records show only one person had badge access in that hour, Vanessa Doyle." Vanessa's lawyer smirked. "And yet you can't prove intent." Clara's eyes sharpened. "The recording proves intent." The audio clip played. Vanessa's own voice whispering through the courtroom speakers. "I've been increasing it. No one suspects. By the weekend he won't wake." A gasp rippled through the gallery. Vanessa's jaw clenched. Her lawyer didn't look so smug anymore. When it was my turn to testify, my hands trembled a little as I raised them for the oath. But once I started speaking, the tremor left. My voice knew what it had to do. "I came to the hospital because she called me," I said. "She said my son had an accident. But when I arrived, a nurse stopped me and told me to hide. I didn't understand why until I heard her." The prosecutor nodded. "What did you hear, Mr. Miller?" "I heard Vanessa and a lawyer talking about my son's death like it was a business plan. They talked about property transfers, accounts, and dosages." My voice cracked slightly. "They were waiting for him to die so they could collect." I heard the shuffle of pens, the weight of silence. The prosecutor said gently, "And did you confront her?" "No, the nurse told me to trust her. We gathered proof instead. I wanted the truth to end her, not anger." When I stepped down, Vanessa's glare followed me the whole way. Then it was her turn. Her lawyer straightened his tie, guiding her toward the stand. "Ms. Doyle, how do you respond to these allegations?" She smiled faintly, still performing. "I loved my husband. I was trying to care for him. I was stressed, exhausted. Maybe I made a mistake handling his medication, but I never meant to harm him." The prosecutor leaned forward. "A mistake that involved forged property papers. Multiple life insurance policies? Offshore bank transfers?" She faltered. "Those were investments for our future, his or yours." The room stiffened. Vanessa's composure cracked for the first time. "You don't understand. He was slipping away. He wouldn't stop working, wouldn't rest. I just wanted control until he got better." "Control that required him to die?" "No," she snapped, then froze. Too late realizing how that sounded, the judge rapped the gavel once. Order, but the damage was done. Vanessa's voice dropped. "You think you're all saints. You think love doesn't rot when it's ignored." She looked at me now, hatred plain as daylight. "You raised a weak man, George. He depended on me. He begged me to take care of him. I stood slowly, the courtroom air thick with every eye watching. He begged you to love him," I said quietly. "You called that a weakness because you never understood the difference. The trial lasted 2 more days. But the verdict was already written in her own words. Guilty on all counts. Attempted murder. Fraud and identity theft. When the gavel fell, Vanessa didn't flinch. She just stared straight ahead, her lips pressed into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You'll die alone," she hissed as officers led her away. I didn't respond. I'd already died the night I thought I'd lost my son. Everything since had been rebirth. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered like vultures. Flashbulbs popped. I shielded my face, not from shame, but from exhaustion. Clara walked beside me, her voice gentle. "You did it." "We did," I said. "You gave him a chance," she smiled. "You gave him a reason to live." Detective Harris joined us, flipping her badge closed. "The DA's office wants to know if Ethan would be willing to give a victim impact statement later." "He will," I said. "When he's ready." Harris nodded. "Take care, Mr. Miller. Fathers like you are rare these days." That night I drove home alone. The highway stretched out like a quiet promise under the pale glow of streetlights. My phone buzzed once. A message from Ethan. "Ethan, heard the verdict. I owe you my life." "Me? No, son. You owe it to the truth." "Ethan, still, thank you, Dad." I parked the truck and sat there a while, watching the porch light flicker in the wind. My wife used to leave that same bulb on for Ethan whenever he came home late from high school parties. I'd scold her for wasting electricity. She'd say, "He'll come home faster if he sees the light." That memory hit me square in the chest. The light was still burning. And for the first time it meant something again. Back in my kitchen, I poured myself a glass of water and stared at the empty chair across from me. The same one my wife used to fill, the same one Vanessa once tried to claim. Grief was still there, but it wasn't alone anymore. Beside it sat something new. Peace. Outside, dawn was just starting to rise. The night had ended. But justice was wide awake. Hospitals are built for survival, but recovery is something else entirely. Survival happens to you. Recovery is something you have to do. 2 months after the trial, Ethan was doing both. The doctors called his case remarkable. His body had flushed out the last traces of warfarin. His blood count stabilized, and his energy, though uneven, was coming back. He walked slow, ate small, laughed rarely, but he was here. Every time I saw that pulse in his neck, I thanked whoever still took my calls in heaven. We were in the rehab wing that morning. He'd taken 5 steps with the walker when he turned and said, "Feels like I'm learning how to be human again." "Better than the alternative," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He grinned. "You always said humor fixes more than medicine. I also said torque your bolts evenly, and you still stripped half of them." He laughed, coughing halfway through it. It wasn't a pretty laugh, but it was a real one, the kind I hadn't heard in a year. That evening I brought him his mail. Get-well cards, bills, a few letters from clients who'd heard what happened. He sorted through them silently until one envelope stopped him cold. No return address, cheap paper, mechanical handwriting. He opened it. Inside was a single sheet with 2 words. "Still here." He stared at it too long. "Dad," he said finally, voice low, "you think it's her?" I took the note, turned it over, and exhaled. "No postmark. Probably someone trying to scare you. She's in federal custody. She's not going anywhere." He nodded, but I saw the tremor in his hand. "Still feels like she's in the room sometimes. Like I can hear her whisper." "That's what trauma does," I said. "It leaves echoes. But echoes fade." He folded the note and dropped it in the trash. "Then let's let this one fade fast." Later, as we sat watching the muted TV, Ethan said, "You know what hurts the most?" I looked over. "The poison." "No," he paused. "That I believed her more than I believed you." There it was. The wound neither medicine nor justice could fix. "I wanted to," he went on. "She told me what I wanted to hear. That I was special. That she was the only one who understood me. And you told me the truth even when it hurt. Guess that's harder to love." "I don't blame you, son," I said quietly. "I've been fooled before, too. The only thing that matters is what you do next." He smiled faintly. "What do I do next?" "Live," I said. "And make the truth the loudest thing in your life." He nodded, and something in his shoulders eased like he'd been waiting for permission to forgive himself. Weeks later, he went home. The house was half empty. Some of Vanessa's things sealed as evidence, others thrown out. The first night back, I helped him cook something simple, chicken soup, his mother's recipe. The same one that used to cure every cold, heartbreak, and argument in our family. As the pot simmered, he leaned against the counter. "You think I'll ever stop feeling stupid?" I shook my head. "Probably not, but you'll stop letting it own you. There's a difference." He stirred the soup thoughtfully. "Clara said something similar." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, did she?" He chuckled, a little embarrassed. "She checks in sometimes. She's easy to talk to. She's also way out of your league," I said, hiding a smile. "Don't screw it up," he grinned. "Like father, like son, huh?" "Not this time," I said. "Learn from your old man's mistakes." Over the next few months, I watched him rebuild, slowly, deliberately. He went back to his shop, hired new staff, and started fresh contracts. His voice regained its authority, his eyes their confidence. But he wasn't the same man, and that was a good thing. He didn't trust as easily anymore, but when he did, it was with open eyes. Sometimes I'd find him sitting on the porch, just breathing. Once he said, "You know, I used to think love was about what you'd die for. Now I think it's about what you'll fight to live for." "Smart man," I said. "You get that from your mother." The day before the sentencing hearing, Clara dropped by. She had a folder in her hand, and that calm smile she always wore when life was trying to knock her over. "Just got the final report," she said. "Vanessa's plea deal collapsed. She's getting 30 years without parole." Ethan exhaled. "So it's really over," Clara smiled gently. "It's over when you decide it is." She handed me a paper, official, stamped, bureaucratic, final. But when I looked at it, all I saw was my son, standing in sunlight again. Clara lingered by the door. "You both did good," she said. "Most people break before the truth sets them free." I looked at her grateful. "You didn't let us break. That's my job," she said. "To make sure the good ones survive." That night, Ethan and I sat outside under a sky that finally looked clean again. Crickets sang somewhere near the fence line, and the smell of rain hung in the air. He said quietly, "You think she'll ever feel sorry?" "People like her don't feel sorry," I said. "They just miss control." He nodded. "Then I guess we're finally free." I raised my coffee mug. "To freedom, son. The kind that doesn't come cheap," we clinked mugs. For a long time, neither of us said another word. The silence wasn't empty now. It was earned. 6 months later, the courthouse smelled of old paper and polished wood. The air had that waiting room heaviness that only justice can bring. Ethan walked beside me, no cane now, no IV scars visible beneath the cuff of his shirt. He was leaner, quieter, but stronger in a way no gym could give him. We took our seats near the front, behind the prosecutor. Vanessa was led in, wearing the same slate-grey uniform she'd worn at every hearing. No jewelry, no lipstick, no mask. Just a woman stripped of the costumes that once fooled everyone. The judge adjusted his glasses and began reading the sentence. On counts of attempted murder, financial fraud, and identity falsification, the court sentences the defendant, Vanessa Doyle, also known as Karen Doyle, to 30 years in federal custody. The gavel fell once. It sounded like an engine finally turning off after running too long. Vanessa didn't flinch. She just stared ahead, jaw locked, eyes cold as metal. When the guards took her by the arms, she turned her head toward us for the first time in months. "You think this fixes anything?" she hissed. He still loved me. Ethan didn't look away. "He survived you," he said quietly. "That's all the fixing we needed." She tried to laugh, but couldn't find the sound. The guards led her away. The door closed behind her, and with it 6 months of noise and shadow. Clara, sitting a few rows back, gave a small nod, half relief, half exhaustion. The prosecutor packed his files. The judge moved to the next case. But for us, that gavel had already drawn the final line. Outside, reporters swarmed again, shouting names, questions, headlines they could twist into drama. Ethan raised a hand politely. "No comment," he said. Then he turned to me. "You ready to go home, Dad?" "I've been ready since the day you woke up," I said. We walked past the flashing cameras, past the voices that didn't matter. For the first time, we weren't running toward anything or away from anyone. We were just walking, two men who'd been through fire and didn't smell of smoke anymore. That evening back at the house, I found the porch light still glowing. Ethan had replaced the old bulb without telling me. It cast a warm, steady circle across the yard. We sat outside with 2 mugs of coffee, the night quiet except for the crickets. "You know," Ethan said, "I used to think strength was about never breaking. But now I think it's about what you do after you've been broken." "That's the truth," I said. "People think justice is a big moment. It's not. It's a long series of small ones, like breathing after you've almost forgotten how." He smiled. "Clara called today. She's transferring to Baltimore General. Offered to stop by before she goes." I chuckled. "Tell her to. She deserves a proper goodbye. Maybe bring her some of that coffee she hates." "Already did," he said. "You raised me right." The sky darkened, stars settling in like familiar faces. I looked at him, my son alive, scarred, wiser, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Rest. I thought of my wife, of the nights she waited up with that same porch light on, of the prayers she whispered for a boy who'd someday need saving. Maybe she heard them answered tonight. Ethan leaned back, eyes on the horizon. "What now, Dad?" I smiled. "Now, we live slow. We fix what's still worth fixing. We keep the light on." He nodded. "Yeah, the light." We sat there until the coffee went cold, not talking anymore, just breathing in peace that finally didn't feel borrowed. Somewhere behind us, the house creaked like it was settling into its own relief. Somewhere out there, behind bars and walls, a woman counted days that would never add up to freedom. And somewhere deeper than all that noise, a father's heart finally unclenched. I used to think revenge meant winning. Now I know it means walking away with your soul still clean. I didn't need to destroy her. I just needed to make sure truth outlived her lies. And it did. It always does. Before I went inside, I looked once more at the porch light. It burned steady, golden, patient. "You did good, son," I whispered. We both did. Then I closed the door behind me, not to shut the world out, but to let peace in. The end.